It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. In an era of chaos, confusion, and craziness, Ferenc is a voice for common sense. As a financial literacy educator, speaker, and entrepreneur, Ferenc cuts through the noise to help us understand how current events affect our money, economy, and our freedom. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc, and we have a great show today. Really excited. We have Brigham Blackham with us. He has quite an interesting story and quite a unique background. Many of you know who listen to this radio show that I do not interview a lot of people, and I'm pretty particular about who I bring on the show, and I want them to have an interesting story. Brigham definitely has that. So Brigham, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here, and it was awesome to have you on my podcast, Levelin Up just barely. So such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was fun. He did a great interview on his podcast. And Brigham, if you don't mind, where would they go to listen to that?
Yeah, if you go to brigham.com/podcast, you'll find it there. You can also find me on Facebook, Brigham Blackham. I'm the only one on there, so that's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So here's my. So first of all, tell us a little about yourself, Brigham. Where do you come from? What did you do? How did you get to where you're at?
For 7 years, I was a Mandarin Chinese teacher in the public school system. Absolutely loved teaching etymology, storytelling, all these different elements of the language. And I had one student that was always falling asleep. I felt like he had like undiagnosed narcolepsy. He was always just like falling asleep. And I was like, what is going on? It's my first year teaching, and how dare him fall asleep in my class?
Right.
So I was like, we need to have a conversation. So right as class adjourned, I walk up to him and I said, hey, what's going on? How can we help you stay awake? He said, well, I don't know. Whenever you start talking in Chinese, I feel like those Charlie Brown characters, wah, 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 wah. And I think it's almost more like a Chinese vibe, like rah, 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 rah. And it's like, okay, all right, let's not be racist. Let's make sure that we understand what you're talking about. And he said, well, have you ever been there when you're learning another language? Or have you ever been there when you just aren't getting it? I said, yeah, as a missionary, there are multiple times where I was in a situation and I felt like my eyes glazed over because I didn't understand enough of the language. And sometimes during lessons, I would literally nod off mid-sentence because I missed so much of what they said. Just fall asleep. You're like, where am I? It happens when you don't understand, but you have to tune back in and reconnect. And he came up with this idea. I said, well, what can we do to make sure that you stay awake? He said, well, what if I just kneel down whenever I feel tired? And I said, you want to kneel down? All right, no problem. So he literally, during my first couple of weeks of teaching, he would kneel down anytime he got tired. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was one of the best feedback tools I'd ever received. I never had someone worship me more, but
that's awesome though. I mean,
yeah.
Because what you're saying, I've done enough public speaking over the years that, it's the hardest thing to do as a public speaker is when you have a crowd that gives you nothing back.
Yeah.
You get a bunch of blank faces, and that's just really hard. When you get people that are, you always, you know what I'm saying? There's somebody as a teacher, there's somebody in the room that's really like tracking you, following along,
right.
And you kind of you zone in with that person in particular, and it just helps you communicate so much better.
So much better. And that feedback was essential for me because I realized I'd been placing most of my focus on what's the content that I'm creating, what's the way that I can make this interesting versus, oh, how is this being received? It was like throwing a pitch at someone and they weren't ready to catch it, just bounced off their face. When he kneeled down, it was something that allowed me to see, oh, I'm not making sense right now. I need to slow it down. I need to sometimes do pause and point. I need to make sure that this is contextualized in a story. I need to make it accessible and more entertaining. And I started realizing there's so many different ways to bring in engagement through questions, through physically acting out things. And I went on this journey to figure out how can I improve my storytelling ability so that I can help people not just have input that's compelling, but comprehensible input, something that they can grasp, they can understand, and then utilize in the language. Now, what that does for a business owner, what that does for a speaker or a coach, someone that really wants to make sure that their message matters, is if you are more engaging, you're more confident, and you have unforgettable messages, what you say actually matters. When you give them an insight, they can take that and use it. And the value of your message is not contingent upon how flowery your language is. It's how useful it is when the message is over. Can your audience take it and use the principle?
Brigham,
That's what I discovered.
that is so powerful because, as a public speaker and on the radio show, I've been to, I'm in the financial world, so I've been to
Mhm.
plenty of conferences that are,
Yeah.
boring as heck. You know what I'm trying to say?
Boring as heck. Yep.
Yeah.
That is generous of
Yes.
you.
I'm
Board
being,
meeting for sure.
oh my gosh. And one of the things in fact, I remember being at one of the, I was at a big real estate investor group, and they were doing a
Mhm.
presentation, and I'd been there a few times, but the owners of this, and they were presenting something, and they genuinely asked me my feedback because they said, the audience is so much more engaged with you than when I talk. What's the difference? And we're using PowerPoint presentations, right?
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
said, you really want to know? He said, yeah, I really want to know. Okay. I said, well, look at yours. First of all, you look at this PowerPoint, and it looks like an encyclopedia. There's just words
Oh,
everywhere. Oh my gosh, people can't read all that, nor can they comprehend that. And I always
right.
said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I said, the ideal PowerPoint slide. They can't always accomplish this. I get it, but the ideal slide is just a picture. If
Hmm.
you can show a picture, and that can communicate a thought or idea, that's perfect. The fewer words, the better. And I said,
Yeah.
I've honed my presentation over well over a decade. And it's not about, like you just said, so powerful. It's not about me making sure that the presentation is perfect or what it was always, how can I communicate this idea
Mm.
in fewer words and more pictures? Use
Yes.
less words to say the same thing.
Yeah.
And the analogy I use, I love this, and I'll let you go again. There was, many people don't know this, I'm a huge history buff, the Gettysburg Address.
Yeah.
Prior to Lincoln speaking for about 2 minutes, which many people remember, 4 score and some years ago, whatever, years ago today, that was there was the number one speaker supposedly in the country who spoke for over 2 hours prior to Lincoln stepping up and sharing about a 2-minute address. Which one do we remember today?
The short, concise one that Lincoln gave.
Exactly.
I wanted to comment on that. One of the distinguishing marks of a genius is
Mm-hmm.
to take a very complicated subject and
Mm-hmm.
boil it down so that a child can understand it. If your audience is being spoken to at a doctorate level
Yep.
and you have high school level people, you just spoke to nobody. You
Right.
literally wasted your time and theirs. But if you are willing to say, I'm not dumbing down my message, I'm simplifying it to the essence. This is the significance element in my story framework. If you focus on what's significant and you make sure that they understand with language they're used to, with examples that they can connect with, suddenly that significance will start to resonate with that audience and they'll be able to do something with your story. But if it's insignificant because it's too flowery, it's too eloquent, it's beautiful language, but it's so poetic that nobody understood it, you wasted your time and theirs.
Yep. In the business world, that's known as the napkin presentation.
Perfect.
And
The napkin
yeah,
presentation.
if
Yep.
you can't communicate, and I've dealt with and have clients with businesses that worth upwards over $100 million.
Mm.
So if you're talking to people like that, they're busy, they're intelligent, they got stuff going on. If you cannot communicate your idea on a napkin, it's too complicated.
Excellent. Now you have to be kind of careful using that in Europe. I think a napkin has a different meaning, but
Okay, that could be. I'm talking about the U.S.
talk about the US. I think that's so important to make sure that it's simple enough that you can draw it and let someone see this is what I'm talking about.
Yep.
A lot of times whenever we are translating our story into somebody else's frameworks, we have to figure out what is their value system. What is it that they care about, their pain points, their reasons for doing something? Because we're either pushed through pleasure or we're pushed through pain. We have both of those motivators and we can utilize both of them in storytelling in such unique, masterful ways. And this is where all of your marketing comes in. This is where you, as a personal brand, will absolutely soar if you can share great stories. If you're not able to share great stories, even if you have great information and insight, it will go in one ear and out the other of your audience.
Yeah, you're resonating with, like, hey, Brigham, you're resonating with stuff that, because I was recently interviewed by an interview, and actually just got published in Yahoo Finance and Business Insider.
Hmm.
And what was interesting was what they wanted to know was some stories about my business. 25 years. What is it? And that's what they published, was some of the stories that I had shared with some of the experiences with the clients over the years, because they even said that's what people love to hear.
Stories are the things that sell. Stories are the things that people will remember. I mean, you can define, interesting topics and you can frame things up really beautifully, but it's not the frameworks that people remember. It's the impact and the emotional quality of that story, that journey. We don't remember all the little details of Frodo and all the different things that he experienced. We remember how it made us feel and that whole journey, that sweeping epic. If you've never seen Lord of the Rings, it's a good one. You should go check it out.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah. You
that's
find someone where they resonate with it. They relate. Somewhat they relate.
for sure.
Mhm.
That relatability, this is the T in my storytelling framework,
Okay.
making sure that you translate it well so that you're not speaking gibberish. Because you can be speaking the same language, you're still speaking English, but if you're using jargon that they are not familiar with, and you don't highly contextualize it within a story, making sure that people understand why you're intentional with those words, the language you use will actually become a barrier. And I speak Mandarin Chinese, I speak some Spanish as well, and I use it all the time in my short-term rental business.
Mhm.
But you think about a language barrier, that's just not knowing how to communicate with somebody else in a way that they feel comfortable. If you can comfortably communicate with them using language they're familiar with,
Mhm.
that changes the way that you interact with them, because you're not trying to use high level language to show off. It's how do I make sure that I connect with you? Let me use your language. What do you value? What do you care about? And then as you draw that language out and you make it meaningful for them, that story now can have more and more impact.
That's really awesome. So, if somebody wants more information to contact you, Brigham, to help maybe
Mhm.
them navigate this process of, like you said, better storytelling,
Yeah,
how do they contact you?
that's a brilliant idea. So I actually have a quick book. This is called Three
Sure.
Reasons Stage Fright Costs and Why You Must Fix It. This is my
Okay.
free giveaway. It's a
Okay.
way that a lot of storytellers, and all of us can become storytellers, they get stuck because they think so much of what are the right words.
Well, I'm gonna cut you off here,
Oh, go
Brigham,
ahead.
because I'm gonna have you, when we come back in the next segment. I'm gonna have him share some of the specifics, what somebody can do. But if they
Yeah.
want to contact you,
BrighamB.com. You'll find me there. Brigham as in Brigham Young, and then B as in just the number, not the number, the letter. BrighamB.com. You can
awesome.
find
Well,
me there.
Brigham, we're gonna have him with the whole show today, so I encourage you to stay tuned on the next segment, because again, I'm gonna ask Brigham what are some practical things someone can do who wants to become better at storytelling. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ference. For more information, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. If you want to contact me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. Today we got a special guest, Brigham Blackham. He's been sharing some really interesting ideas in terms of better ways to communicate through storytelling. So, Brigham, first of all, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Frank. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to dive into some really nitty-gritty topics that will allow people to improve their storytelling. It's awesome.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. So, what are some practical steps someone could do that maybe doesn't feel like they're the best at communicating or telling stories?
This is one of my favorite ways to do this. I use a 5 point framework: STORY. S is for significance, T is for translate, O is for objective, R is for relive, and then Y is for yes. Let me explain this.
Okay.
The significance is what is the most important elements of your message? What are the things that have to be there, not are just nice to be there? When you can boil down your message to its core elements, to the principles that have to be there, suddenly your essence of your message can be communicated more effectively. Now, when you translate that essence of your message to your audience, you have to think, how will this be received? How can I use their language to make sure that this message makes sense to them? Because if you have a great message that it's very significant, but you're using Chinese and they don't speak Chinese, it will be a waste of both your time.
Right.
Now, the objective portion of this, when you're focusing on the objective, this is what's the purpose behind sharing this? Because you can have a very meaningful message, but if it doesn't have a direction and a purpose behind sharing it, it's a pointless story, literally. You want to make sure you stay on point. Help remind your audience, this is why I'm sharing this for you. This is what it means for you. And as you do that, it allows you to fight for that objective and make sure that anytime you're doing an engagement question, you're helping them stay on track. Now, the relive portion of this framework is all of the different performative elements. This is getting into neurolinguistic programming, associating, disassociating with different things, making sure that everything that you do in your story is an experience. It's not just saying
So,
words.
what do you mean
Yeah.
by, go back to that a sec?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Neurolinguistic programming.
Okay, what is that?
Neuro
What is
is
that?
your brain. Neuro is in
Sure.
your brain, right? And linguistic is the language that you use, and programming is the software, if you will, that you run. The program is all based on the choices of language that you use. In storytelling, you have the opportunity to choose very specific language so that you can paint a picture. So you can help them feel something, you can help them see something, smell it, you can taste it, all of these different sensory experiences. And that's the relive section. If all you do is relate a story, you will leave your audience wanting more. And that's not in a good way. If you are able to relive the story and help them experience it, suddenly it is now their story and they can see through those eyes, smell through that nose, and taste the story in a way that is drastically different. Now, the why in this is the yes in story, is a clear, concise call to action. In business, if you don't have this, you spent all this work making sure it was really well connected, it was beautiful, but you didn't tell them to do anything based on your story. So, what's going to happen? Probably nothing. They might not
Right.
actually change. If you want change, you have to have a clear commitment. Say, will you go watch my podcast, Levelin Up? These are the benefits from doing that. You're going to have an increased awareness of your storytelling abilities. You'll be able to improve your skill set as a presenter, and you're going to be more comfortable on and off stage. Now, if they're like, oh, I want those benefits, I will go do that action. If they don't care about those benefits, then you weeded out somebody from your pool of people that don't value what you're going to be sharing with them, and that's okay. So
And
that's the easiest. Oh, go ahead.
Brigham, one point I thought, you mentioned, speakers and on stage and audiences, all that, and of course that all applies, but this could be true for one-on-one.
Absolutely.
You're in business. One of the things I tell people all the time is, even if you have a job working for a
Mhm.
company, we're all salespeople to some degree. I mean, we have to sell ourselves, our abilities and skills to our employer, at the very
Yeah.
least. And if you have any customer interaction of any kind, whether it's a vendor or a customer or anything, all these
Right.
things still apply. Better communication.
Customer service is a mindset throughout your entire organization. I was just listening
Yes.
to a book this morning
Hmm.
where Dan Clark, he was someone I met years ago. He's a great speaker. He talked about him going and visiting the Buccaneers when they were in their like one of the worst seasons they'd ever had. He walks in and the receptionist doesn't even greet him. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
hi, you can go in there." And she didn't get out of her seat. She buzzed the door and then
Yeah.
let him go into the conference room.
Uh-huh.
And the difference between that and the Dallas Cowboys, when he walks in, the receptionist gets up and so excited, greets him. Everything is just polished brass and beautiful
Yep.
mahogany wood. Everything was pristine. He was treated like a VIP, and the juxtaposition of how different that feeling was.
Yep.
That's the customer service. Did the receptionist get paid differently? Probably. But it was, how am I going to treat my people? That is something that you want to have throughout your entire organization. If you can
Yep.
improve your storytelling and your
Hmm.
communication skills in business And in life, you're going to be more persuasive. You'll be able to help people see why the things that you think matter. Because if you can't clearly communicate those ideas, they will stay in your head. They have to be articulated in a way that makes sense to your audience so that they can grasp the concepts. Otherwise, you're wasting hot air.
And unfortunately, communication or a lack thereof is a very, very common problem
Absolutely.
throughout society, all levels.
It's it's an epidemic in a lot of ways. I feel
Yep,
like even 10 years ago, people were much more willing to just open up and have a conversation at a
yep,
gas station or in line at a grocery store. Nowadays, so many people are glued to their phone like they
shocking.
stuck super glue on there and they're like, I can't let go of this for even a second. We have to figure out how can I make an interpersonal connection with somebody. Storytelling is one of the ways that you level up. That was intentional. Leveling up, like the podcast.
Yep,
You
there
level
you
up
go.
your communication skills. If you cannot experience somebody else in every element of their communication, their vocal quality, their passion, their excitement through storytelling, man, you miss out on almost everything about them. Texting is not going to cut it when it comes to long-term communication and building friends.
And you can use, I mean, I used that very kind of idea yesterday to get a better table at a restaurant. I
Yeah.
wanted one with a view, and like you said, I walked up to the hostess. She was like, da 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 da, and we had a little bit of a wait, and so I was just hanging out, started talking to her, and I wanted, the better view. And then as we started talking, she said, "Well, we're kind of booked right now, though. I get it." And I found an area of connection. We started talking about, she visited Arizona. I'm from Arizona. Next thing I know, I think we have a table for you. Guess what? We got the table, the beautiful view, the whole deal, just by talking to her. You know, so you can apply. People find it shocking. I talk to everybody when I'm out and about, and it's
Wait a minute.
amazing what
You
you.
talk to people? This
I
is
know I
this
don't
is
have my phone.
crazy.
I mean,
You don't
it's
have to
on
have your
me,
phone out the whole time?
but it's not in front of me. By the way, I'm a financial guy, as people know, and I tell all my clients, hey, I turn off my phone in the evenings and the weekends. So if you want to call me, you can leave me a text or call. I'll get back with you Monday. And one, they're shocked. And then two, they respect the fact. Then they respect it
Mhm.
because I talk to people. I communicate. I'm in the moment where I'm in, and that's, to me, that's how you live life. The past you
Yeah.
can't change. The future is not guaranteed. You God only gives us the present. Make what you can of it, and like you said, if you can just, like you said, and you know this, the number one fear of Americans is public speaking, right?
Yeah.
It's
That's
more people fear that than dying. That's pretty crazy.
yeah, a lot of people would rather be in the casket than give
Yeah, it doesn't
the
speak in
obituary.
front of a group. Yeah, exactly. Think about that a minute. But where do you start? One on one.
Well, can I dispel a myth really quick? This is
Sure.
something that a lot of people that have a fear of public speaking, they still speak in public every day.
Right.
Anytime that you open your mouth in public, outside of you being by yourself, you are speaking in public. There has to be purpose behind what you're sharing. If you have purpose, if it's meaningful enough, you will open your mouth and it will happen. You think about how you serve somebody else. If you knew that your words would save someone from getting hit by a bus, would you open your mouth and say, hey, watch out?
Sure.
Absolutely. Sure. This is a no brainer. Almost anybody that has a
Mhm.
little bit of a heart would do that.
Right.
If you truly believe that your message is golden, it is extremely valuable, and you know it because of proven results you've seen, it no longer becomes about you. If you're
Mhm.
sharing your story for you, that's definitely going to increase your anxiety because you're going to be worrying about every nitpicky word. It's all about, oh, how do I make sure that this is perfect? It's not about perfection. It's about completion so that your audience can say, oh, I can take this and use it. If you're there to serve, you're going to be able to bless people's lives. If you're there to get something from the audience, people can feel it. You get commission breath. You feel
Yep.
like
Yep.
people are not being genuine.
Right.
And if you're there to serve and honestly help somebody else, and your message was really tailored for them, suddenly it's not about how you show up, it's about how do you serve. And when you serve at that frequency,
Mhm.
people will respond in a very different way.
Right. And it brings two thoughts to my mind: is people have the fear because they're worried about what somebody's going to think about them, or
Mhm.
they're going to be embarrassed or whatever. Let me share a little secret. Most people don't care about you. They're thinking about themselves and their
Right.
situation and their problem. They're not thinking about you that much, if at all.
For
So
sure.
you need to stop worrying about that, what other people think. And then, like you said, that's the classic Zig Ziglar. You help enough other people get what they want, eventually you'll get what you want. So you focus on their needs and their wants.
Mm. Can I add a little bit more to that? Because I think this quote
Sure.
is so important. You help enough people get what they want, you can get anything that you want. But there is an element that you're like, well, is that like tit for tat? Do I have to do this so that I can get that? You have to displace money from
Hmm.
the equation with time. If you are going to serve someone, serve them. If you are going to do it for a specific reason, that you get money exchange, that's a transaction. That is different than a transformational relationship.
I love that.
If you're going to be really your very best highest frequency on stage, you want to make sure that you're there to serve, you're planted and you're grounded in that moment, meaning you're present with the people, you're connecting with them, not just through your voice, but you're in the room with them. You're not thinking about other stuff. You're not talking about, oh, what is the offer going to be at the back of the room so I can make sure this is, you know,
Hmm.
worthwhile for me. You want to
Right.
figure out how can I serve, and you share the stories, you tailor the message so that it serves them. That will shift fundamentally the way that people
Well,
respond to you.
Brigham, that's phenomenal. And I want to bring us back in the next segment. I want to touch on that more about you'll eventually get what you want, because I don't think enough people
Mm.
think about that. But you're the first person I think has ever brought that up. I think it's awesome. If somebody wants to contact you for more information on how to communicate more effectively in storytelling, how do they contact you, Brigham?
Beautiful. You can come to Brigham, Brigham, B as in boy.com, and looking forward to connecting with you.
Awesome. Next segment, stay with us, because I'm going to ask him a little bit more about that. Eventually, you'll get what you want. I think that's powerful. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ference. For more information, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. So we've got a great guest today, Brigham. I've had a great time listening to and getting some great ideas on communication, better storytelling. Brigham, thanks. Welcome to the program again.
Oh, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here, and you've got a wonderful platform. So thanks for having
Well,
me.
well, thank you, thank you. You brought up something. I've shared this quote. I've heard this quote for my entire career. From Zig Ziglar. If you help enough other people get what they want, eventually you'll get what you want. And
Mhm.
you shared a thought I don't think I've heard anyone ever articulate. And I thought it was awesome where you said, you were talking about you have to be in the. I think the point I'm trying to get to is what the quote is. It's the eventually. You have to
Mhm.
say. I loved what you said. You have to separate the result with time. I'll just share personally. Like I would have a lot of people. I work in the financial business. I get paid commissions and all that. And but I know less about like what I'm going to get paid. I'll give a perfect example. We get incentive trips for being top producers in the industry,
Mhm.
and I qualify every year pretty much. I mean, I don't think about it. My manager told me, he says, don't think about the incentives, just go help people, and that will come. And I remember one year, it was a couple of years ago, in fact, it was December 31st of the year, and the qualification period for that particular incentive trip was Hawaii trip. Um, was that year. So this was the last day. And my daughters, I remember, asked me, "Hey, Dad, are we going to Hawaii in the spring?" And I realized, don't know.
Mm.
I had not once looked the entire year to see where I was at.
Oh
to
no.
see, no idea. I honestly, now I assumed I probably did. In the back of my mind, I knew I probably did because I usually do. But it honestly never occurred to me to even look.
Mm.
And I looked at it again. It was New Year's Eve. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered at that point. I couldn't have done anything else, right? Turns out I did, and we went. But I was like, but the striking point was it never even occurred to me to look because that wasn't important. My focus was, hey, how can I just help more people? Because I knew the
Mhm.
results would come. And I love what you said about that, where you have to separate, help enough more people, and you separate the results with time. So go into that a little more if you don't mind.
Patience is one of those things that comes bottom line for this.
Mm-hmm.
Patient is not gritting your teeth and just suffering through it.
Right,
It
no.
is actually saying what is in my control, those controllables, and doing your very best with the energy resources that you have. We call this going the final percent. So I'm part of the final percent network
Sure.
and one of the infinity coaches there. This concept is so essential to make sure that wherever you are, if you can serve someone with your whole heart, your whole mind, and all of the available resources you have at that moment, maybe you only have 30% capacity that day. When you do that 30% for that person, suddenly you went the final percent in that day. Now,
Okay.
when you have the difference between I'm going to just give my best and I'm going to expect to be paid immediately, there's where there's going to be some contention with people. A lot of times I deal with real estate investors, I deal with entrepreneurs. They want to have the results now. They want it now because it's
Right.
the microwave mentality. I want to
Yep.
do it now. If you can be patient enough to say, you know what, I know the result will come when it is ready.
Right.
Sometimes you plant the seed, and just like the Chinese bamboo plant, you have to wait 7 to 10 years for that to flourish. You still have to nourish it, you still have to water it. Your business, like compound interest, what you talk about,
Yes.
you have to be patient enough to do the daily consistency and make sure that you are serving first. You're not focused on the transaction, you're focusing on the transformation. You're not focusing on uh, the the gap, saying, oh, look how far I have to go. You're focusing on what's the gain? What are the things that I'm getting better at every single day? And one of the things people really get stuck on is comparative reality. You're always comparing yourself to other entrepreneurs. Social media has made this so prevalent.
Yep.
I even fall into it at times. It's really difficult to say, oh, why have I at 35 years old not been able to make multiple millions of
Yes.
dollars yet?
Right.
Well, you haven't done the inputs the same as that person, and they also had specific reasons that they got that. If you want those outputs, you have to do the inputs.
Right.
And there's also that element of time and almost a gestational period for success.
Mm-hmm.
So we can go farther into this, but this idea of being patient for your success, if you stick with it, eventually you will get what you want because you're like a bulldog grabbing onto something and not letting go.
Right.
You're willing to do the work necessary until it's done rather than until it's inconvenient.
And I think the key point you made there is the eventually, because I
Mhm.
love that. The way I look at it is I can't really control the results. I can't, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink, right?
Yeah.
But what I focus on what I can control. How well am I communicating the idea? How well am I answering this person's questions? How well am
Mm.
I developing a plan that makes sense for them? In fact, my people sometimes think it's a little hokey, but it's true. Before every appointment, I pray for not. I don't pray for making a sale, quote unquote. I pray for God give me the wisdom to share the information this person needs to make the best decision for themselves.
Mm, that's beautiful.
And
And
I've done that for 25 years. Some work out great, some work don't. I have no idea how it's going to. I have
yeah,
no idea. I do the best I know how to do at the time, like you said, and my best
right.
has gotten better over time, obviously.
Thank
But
goodness, right?
well,
It
obviously,
keeps getting
you get
better.
better. You get better. You you learn. You get feedback. You improve. You grow. You get more
Mm,
experience. But you do the best, and you can't. You just focus on what's the best you can do at that time to help that person, and then the results happen. Sometimes now, sometimes later, sometimes never. You have no idea. But I can also point back to there's results I've received that I had no business getting. It just
mm,
popped up and happened because I just had, like you said, the patience and the faith that what it's going to happen if I just do the best I know how to do to help this
right.
person.
Funny with patience. I've got
Yeah.
4 kids, and if you
Yes.
pray for patience, you have to be careful because you might get
Oh
pregnant.
yeah.
There's nothing better to teach someone patience than to have 4 kids. Sometimes you've got things that happen that you're like,
Yeah,
how do I deal with this?
right.
And it
Well,
it will test every element of who you are. It
I
reveals that
completely agree.
so
I've
much.
got two, and one of them special needs, so add that on top of it,
Yes. Oh man.
and that will really test your patience. That's why the divorce rate is so high with special needs parents, for example,
Really.
90%. I've been told. Um, it is. I always say people. Our oldest, she's 21. She was diagnosed with autism when she was 4.5. And
Yeah.
yes, it's been challenging, no doubt. It's also been rewarding in many ways. And yeah, that probably taught me more patience than anything I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Can I talk about foresight versus
Yes,
hindsight for a second?
absolutely.
When you think about foresight, looking far enough ahead that you say, this is what I want with my life, my vision, I'm designing my life for that. If you look far enough ahead, there are certain people that you can model and mimic that have what you want, that you can say, well, if I do the right inputs today, I can eventually get what they have, or at least what I want out of what they have.
Hmm.
But if you don't have the foresight to look far enough in advance, you will not be able to get those results. Like if you want a
Sure.
6 pack, you talk to someone that has actually done that, been there, done it, and you give yourself enough time so that you can figure out, how do I get these inputs? I can increase my skill, my competency, and figure out what's in my control. And eventually, with the right training and the right mentorship, you will be able to have that result. It's
Right.
it's so important with foresight. You can do the same thing with your finances.
Sure.
You look into the vision of what you want to create and you model those that are doing it. They're living, breathing proof that it's reality, and it changes your commitment. Because if you're just thinking about hindsight, wondering what happened rather than figuring out what I'm going to do with what I want to happen, the world's going to just pass you by and you'll get exactly what you got. And you didn't get to choose it.
Yeah.
It just
Well,
oopsed in front of you.
when you talk about finances, it's even easier because, again, I do a lot of guaranteed stuff. It's really simple.
Mhm.
You say, if you tell me how much, or we determine how much income you say you need at retirement, or you want a certain amount of assets or whatever, we can
Yeah.
reverse engineer it. And if you do
Yeah.
this each month for this period of time, you will be there. When you're talking about guaranteed results, there's no question it's going to happen. I can reverse
Beautiful.
engineer. It's Yeah. So that's like you said, the foresight. Give me the amount, the time frame, and I can reverse engineer what you need to do today, this month, and every month going forward to get there. Now, are you willing to do that? That's a different question. But
That's a good point. Are you willing to
right?
do the work?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Are willing or able to do that? Right. But can you determine where you want a target?
Mhm.
Absolutely. And then the other part of it is life happens. We all get it. Well, if you shoot for the stars and you hit the moon, you're probably still farther ahead than you would have been if you. In other words, if you don't have a target,
Mhm.
you're guaranteed to fail.
Absolutely. You have to have a target. You have to be willing to work
Yep.
towards what you care about. I remember
Yep.
when I was writing my wife on my mission, because I served a
Mhm.
proselyting mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Taiwan. So for two
Okay.
years, I was away from her and she was dating other people. And I just consistently writing a letter, hoping that we could build a friendship that could turn into something more.
Uh huh.
But I was focused on my mission. When I came back, the shift that had happened was she saw how committed I was because I didn't miss a week.
Uh,
Just like you haven't missed a week on your radio show. I haven't missed
no,
a week on
I've been.
my podcast, right? Like,
It's
go
in
ahead.
6 years. I think there's been 3 weeks that I haven't done new content, and the only reason was I literally lost my voice because I was sick. I laryngitis
Ah,
those 3 weeks in 6 years, and so I had to do a repeat show. But
mhm.
yeah, you don't build success without lack of consistency.
Right. And consistency is what I learned about writing my wife or she wasn't my
Hmm.
wife at the time, but
Sure,
the girl that I was fancying,
it
if you
got her
will,
attention, obviously.
got her attention.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I courted her for like 6 days and I asked her to marry me and she said yes
Well.
because of the consistency and
Yep.
building a friendship rather than just focusing on what I wanted out of the relationship. I said, how can I contribute to this relationship? How can I give more? How can I share great stories? Because people
Yeah.
don't always care about what you say. They do care about how you make them feel and
Hmm.
the experience. It's way better to have someone experience you than to just hear you. Very different.
Yeah, because that's a common misconception out there. Marriage is not 50-50. Sometimes it's 90-10, both
Yeah,
ways. Depends on what's going on in life at that point, right?
absolutely. One of the things my friends talk about, they have a relationship business
Hmm.
for marriage. Road of Life, shout out to you guys. It's all about making sure that you go 100% and they go 100%. If you have a
Yep.
100% marriage on both
Yep.
sides, you actually have a 200% marriage because there's
I like
overlap.
that.
If someone
Great way.
falls short a little bit, you are able to still stay together.
That's awesome. Blake, Brigham, if somebody wants to contact you, what's the best way to do so for more information?
Absolutely. Well, check out the Levelin Up podcast. You definitely want to go see what Frank and I talked about recently.
Yeah.
But if you go to brighambee.com, you can /home, HOME, you'll be able to get a lot of different content. I have blog posts on there, so many different things that are insightful to help you. And I can give you even my 3 reasons stage fright costs and why you must fix it. That's a free download. Yeah, reach out. I'm
That's
happy to help
awesome.
you guys.
Well, I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned in the last segment with Brigham here. I'm going to ask him, he had a unique experience being in Taiwan. I'm going to ask him how that experience helped him in his communication. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ferens. For more information, contact Ferens at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferens Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferens at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferens Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me at yourpersonalbank.com. We have a great guest here today with us, Brigham. Thanks for joining us today on the Your Personal Bank Show. It's been a lot of fun. He's been sharing a lot of great stuff about communication, storytelling. What I wanted to ask, and you brought this up, Brigham, is your experience you had in China.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you learned Mandarin, I understand.
Yep.
How did that experience help you in your communication skills?
It's funny. I have heard this experience called the best 2 years. There's lots of young men in my church go and do this. If you've ever seen guys with a little name tag that's black name tag and white shirts, you probably ducked behind your couch. We've seen you, I know. But
I've also talked to him, but I've avoided
also
him
talked to him.
too.
Great. We absolutely love serving people. One of the things that I learned as a missionary was you have to open your mouth. There was this expression, SYL, speak your language. I learned it as a brand new missionary, my first week, and it drastically impacted the way that I communicated with people, because as soon as you grasp the language of the Spirit, you grasp the language, and then you help somebody else connect to that. Those connections, call it storytelling, call it whatever you want, making a connection with someone, that's what it's all about. Figuring out how you can serve them. You have to open your mouth, otherwise there will be no connection. If you're not having the conversations, there's no commerce. If you're not having the conversations, there's no conversion in
Right.
church terms or in business terms. Everything starts with opening your mouth. Now, sometimes that might look like you're writing a letter, like I did with my now spouse, right? My wife. But through communication, you have to open up and say, this is what's in my head. Here's what I'm willing to share with you. And this is why I'm sharing it with you. This is that storytelling framework I was talking about. Figure out what's significant. You share the significance of that with somebody else. You translate it in a way that they can understand it. And you do it in a way that is on point and focused. You help them have an experience with it. You relive it. And then you give them a clear, concise call to action with a, yes, I can do that. Suddenly that framework can now work for you. That's
How do you
so
what do you
important.
recommend? So if you I've seen this too, where somebody just they're just selling their idea, selling, which turns people off. How do you
Yeah.
get people to want to start communicating with them, but how get them open to your message? I guess that's
Mm.
what I'm trying to get at.
What I'm hearing here is people aren't engaging with you. If
Hmm.
you are talking at somebody, that is different
Right.
than talking with somebody.
Right.
How can you do this as a speaker, as a presenter, as anyone, even in a regular conversation? You have to engage with them. One of my favorite tools or strategies is called engagement questions. This is documented all over the world. You can find this. If you have great questions that engage your audience, suddenly you'll help them think. You'll help them articulate different ideas. You can help them write down different things. And because they're engaging with your content through a question, you can now know that you're making an impact. Let me give you an example. If I say, how many of you online that aren't driving are currently using the My Personal Bank stuff? If you are, touch your head like this. If I was in an audience, I would be able to see them.
Uh-huh.
That little simple call to action. You say, oh, there's a third of these people are using this. Now, how many of you have heard of this before? Touch your shoulders like this. And then you can see there's a different poll that happens.
Right.
Those types of engagement questions, you can use it physically. That's called total physical response. You don't just have to raise your hand. This is something a lot of boring presenters do. They only say, hey, raise your hand if you really enjoy this or you really want this result. That's the only action they tell you to do. Or maybe it's write this down. There are every verb in the entire language to use to create engagement questions. Your creativity is the only restriction. That's it.
One of the funny things I get told, my wife will say to me sometimes, she goes, everywhere I go, I meet people. And then many of them, they'll ask me what I do for a living and things like that. And it leads to them many times, not always, but becoming clients or whatever, or at least listen to the radio show or whatever. But, and I used to teach my agents and stuff this. It's like, you just talk to people and you ask them about themselves. You start the conversation, and then, and then depending on how it goes, you just ask them, where are they from, what do they do for a living? Very simple questions like that. And they'll open up and start talking about themselves. And instead of I don't volunteer anything, then they'll inevitably, many times, then ask me. And then that opens the door.
Thinking about door approaches, this is we're talking about missionary work.
Exactly.
Every single one of us have to start a conversation somehow.
Right.
Most of the conversations that I started on my mission started with a pen.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
All right.
There are people that would be driving around their little Vespa scooters, have their dorky helmet on, and they're just looking forward, just don't look to the side. And I would ride up on my bike that was spray painted. It looked like a 3-year-old spray painted it with all these dorky colors, pinks and greens and mauve, all this stuff. I'd get up there and I'd reach out my pen and say, hey, how you doing? And they're like, why am I taking this pen? And they would take the pen, and then the stoplight would go green, and they're like, oh, all right, come over here. And they would have my pen in their hands. So they're like, oh, I have to get over the side of the road now. And you could start a conversation. You think about the conversation starters that you have, it can be as simple as a pen. Now, for me, a pen is a powerful and an engaging narrative, a story. But you can have a pen be anything. It can be whatever in your business starts the conversation. Maybe it's a chart that you put some heart behind because you're like, oh, this is something that's really powerful. I want to make sure that you guys see this visually so it will have impact, and we start a conversation. If it doesn't start a conversation, why are you doing it? Because conversation creates commerce. If you have great content, it will start conversations. If there's no conversation happening, a lot of times it's in your messaging that it seems like you shared everything that they needed to know, and they're not going to talk with you again.
Right.
But if you can help them see, oh, wow, that's the person that I want to go to for my personal bank. I want to have a conversation. Now they're going to come to you and start that conversation. You give them enough information that they're like, yes, I want this. Here's the stories to validate why it matters. And then they'll come and connect with you. It's huge.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. Yeah, it's just like you said, just kind of getting outside of yourself and just talk to people, which is these days, like you mentioned earlier, I think you stand out even more than you might have previously because there's so much less of that. Like you say, you go into a restaurant, everybody's, glued to their phone.
Glued to the phone.
Yeah, and I make a point. I'll be in the restaurant. I have my phone in my pocket in case somebody calls me, but and then I'll look at the person next to me, and I'll just say, for example, not too long ago, I remember this lady. She was eating the salad, looked awesome, and I just started commenting, "Man, that looks really good." I was thinking about what to order, and she put her phone down and starts talking to me, and then we engaged in a 45-minute conversation after that. It was amazing.
That's how you take someone that is a stranger and turn them into a friend.
Right.
The difference between a friend and a stranger is just having those conversations, and it has to start somewhere, right? The difference between
Right.
a friend and someone that you do business with is they know, like, and trust you. You build
Right.
trust through the content you create, the stories you share,
Yep.
the value propositions that you have, that they're like, oh, I want that. I want these benefits. Yes, I will buy this service.
Right.
It has to start with a conversation. They have to find out something about you. If they don't know you and like you, the chances of them trusting you is almost zero.
Right.
As they know and like you, and they see what you've done, your credibility, your associations with different people, what
Right.
you can do for them, suddenly they're like, let's have this conversation to figure out how we can take that idea and turn it into implementation.
Yeah. I mean, if they
Huge.
don't know you, there's a 100% chance they're not doing business with you. They don't know you.
They don't know you. Yeah, it's a 0%. They're not
Yeah,
going to
zero.
happen.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just getting out there, and it's so funny. I had people always saying, "How do you find so many referral?" I mean, I was became the master of referrals and things like that, and just getting, my whoever did my hair became a client. Whoever did my doctor became a client. Whoever I interacted with, wherever I was, I just started talking to them and
That's
asking them
beautiful.
about themselves. I would open the conversation with something as simple as, "Hey, that salad looks amazing."
Right.
And if they responded, great. People love talking about themselves. They really
They're
do.
very
So if you start,
interested in themselves. It's their favorite.
yes, exactly. So you start asking them a few questions about themselves. Where are you from? What do you do? Just simple things like that. They'll start telling you. And then
That's so
again,
good.
and then inevitably it'll lead to, often, not always, but oftentimes they'll reciprocate. And then that gives you an opportunity to share. Well, you may or may not be interested. It's funny now. I say, well, I host a nationally syndicated radio show. Most of the time, that elicits oh, really? What's it about?
Build a little curiosity in there by
Yeah,
blowing your nose is what I like to call it. Your
yeah.
KNOWs, right?
But I
What do
also,
you know?
but I also call it like fishing, because there's
Yeah,
times I'll say that and there's no response. Okay, well, I fished and I threw out the bait and
yeah.
nothing bit. So go to a different pond. Right?
That reminds me, when I was a teacher, I had this opportunity where we went to a fish hatchery,
Huh?
and there were so many fish in this tiny little pond that it just like, all you do is just throw a little handful of these and you put a hook down there and pull them up. And I was like, no
Oh
way.
wow.
So you
Yeah,
throw a little fish, and no need for the bait. It was just
they were all there. Yeah,
grabbing. They're all there and just
yeah.
pulling up fish. It was
Well,
nuts.
Brigham, any
Really fun.
any last thoughts you would want to leave folks with today? It's been great
Absolutely.
having you.
If you want to improve your communication, you want to be unforgettable, engaging, and compelling on and off stage, it starts with you really knowing yourself, knowing your message, and why you're doing it for other people. I had my mission president share this idea with me years ago. Whatever challenges you're facing in life, in business, you think all the way through the consequences or the results that you want. And if it's a temptation of something that you don't want, you can see the results in your mind's eye. I call this my consequence compass, if you will. You think all the way through those results. You're like, are those the results that I want? If it is, do it. If it isn't, then you figure out, who is it that has results that I want? You model and mimic the very best of the best. If you are looking to find ways to improve your mindset, your skill set, your tool set in the realm of storytelling, I'm your guy. I
Okay.
definitely would love to help out. Come check out my book.
How?
It's called Three
Yeah.
Three Reasons Stage Fright Costs and Why I Must Fix It. You can find it on brigham.com. Check out Levelin Up Podcast. But I just hope this was able to serve all of you. I'm looking forward to connect again. Thank you so much.
Well, Brigham, it was a pleasure having you on the show, and yeah, I encourage people. Yeah, he's one of the best communicators I've run across in quite a long time, and so that's I know some pretty high up folks who do this for a living, Brigham. I mean, I think you're on the right track. And this guy's going places, folks. This guy's going places, and if you want to learn more, I highly encourage you to contact Brigham. As always, stay tuned to the Your Personal Bank show next week for some more great information, and as long as it's on our money, in God we trust.
Listen Tuesdays at noon and Saturdays at 1 to the Your Personal Bank show for more information. Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guests of this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Some products discussed may have limitations and not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Dividend rates and bank line of credit rates may change. For current rates, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. Again, that's 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com.